Okay, so the topic of this video will be kind of how to build a graph and kind of some of the differences between a line graph and a bar graph. So let's get started. Well, first of all, some of the graphing basics. Why do we build a graph in the first place? Well, a graph helps us to better visualize data that's been collected in an experiment, perhaps. Graphs help us to observe if there are any patterns and trends. You can see in this graph there's a downward pattern in the decay rate of carbon-14. If you've ever heard of radiometric dating, over time carbon will decay at a relatively known rate and pattern. It's nice to visually see that. And lastly, graphs help us to better summarize large amounts of data. You've probably heard the expression, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So we can say things with thousands upon words, or we can show a picture, and often show that information even better than thousands of words might do. Well, first of all, the graph you see here, this is a line graph. Notice how it is showing changes over a long period of time. Over 40,000 years has taken place in this particular graph, and that's why we've chosen a line graph. Whenever you're showing changes that occur over a period of time, in most cases you're going to opt to do a line graph. Well, how does that differ from a bar graph? Now, this graph right here being a bar graph, we're comparing sets of data. What we're actually comparing, this is kind of a fun little graph here, it compares the odds of rolling 2 dice and getting a 3, or a 5, or an 8. So what if you were to roll an 11? You see from the bar, you have just under a 6% chance of rolling an 11. Compare that to the odds of rolling an 8. From the bar, you can see just under a 14% chance of rolling an 8. So if you're comparing sets of data here, side by side, it's nice to see a bar graph. Okay, so here's some data right here. And if you notice what the data is showing, it shows how the population in the United States has changed from 1980 to 2015. If I were to ask you to graph this data, based on what we just discussed, what do you think, a line graph or a bar graph? Well, I hope you would recognize this would be a line graph because we are showing how the population of the United States has changed over a period of time from 1980 to 2015. Well, look at this set of data right here. This is the year 2016. It's the population size of these 6 states right here. In this example, I hope you realize a bar graph would be best because we're comparing California to Illinois to New York to Florida to Texas to Washington, and it's all for the same year, 2016, so we're not showing anything changing over a period of time. We're just comparing side by side. So let's start with this information. We just saw this a moment ago. This is the population of the USA and how it's changed from 1980 to 2015. And we're going to make a line graph, which means we're going to display how the changes have occurred over this period of time. Well, here is our same data. I just had to create a little bit of space because we're going to put our graph grid right here in this area here. Now let's talk about a few needs first. Let's start with the title. How about my lab graph? Well, I hope you see that's just not acceptable. It doesn't tell me anything. Well then, how about science data? Again, this doesn't really tell me anything. How about people? Well, that's a little better. At least it tells me people are involved, but it's still so vague. How about something specific? People in the USA from 1980 to 2015. Be specific to the readers of your graph. So now we're going to focus on a label for the x-axis, and that's along the bottom. And the general rule for a change over time graph is the time unit goes along the x-axis. So can I just say time? Well, I hope you realize that's not good enough because there's lots of ways to measure time. Days, weeks, months, seconds, in this case years. So that means I should just say years, right? Well, that's better, but still we have to do a little bit better. We actually have to state that years is the unit of time. And if you're wondering why, doesn't everybody know that years is a way to measure time, or that minutes is a way to measure time? Yeah, in those examples, I think that is universally known. But what if you're measuring in physics and chemistry class? What if you're measuring something in joules? Is that universally known for what a joule measures? I don't think so. Or maybe in physics you're measuring something in newtons. I don't think that's universally understood what a newton measures. And also a pascal. Is a pascal something that is universally known? So because you might encounter some measurements that are not universally known, yes, we do have to state time, and then in parentheses we can say years or minutes or weeks. In this case it would be years. Okay, so now let's focus on a label for the y-axis. And a general rule here, the y-axis is the dependent variable. It's the data being measured. Well, what are we measuring from 1980 to 2015? We're measuring the population size in millions of people. So let's keep it just like that, nice and simple. Well, now we have to focus on properly setting up the data. Couple rules. Number one, keep your spacing consistent, and the intervals between numbers must be consistent. So, for instance, can I do this? Well, I hope you see which rule we just violated. We violated the spacing must be consistent. Notice how there are 3 gaps between 1980 and 1985, and then down to 2 gaps, and then back to 3 gaps, and then 2 gaps, and then 3 gaps, and 2 gaps, and 3 gaps. This will end up distorting the shape of our line graph once we were to actually create it. So how about this? Can we do this? Notice how the spacing looks fine, but we violated the interval rule from a moment ago. Between 1980 and 1985 is a gap of 5 years. And then between 85 and 90 is a gap of 5 years. But then there's a gap of 10 years, and then down to 5 years, and then 5 years again, and then back to 10 years. This also would distort the shape of our line graph if we were to do this. And so that's the reason why we have to keep everything consistent. So how about something like this? The spacing looks pretty good. The intervals look pretty good. I'm happy with this. Do I have to create a spacing where I use every single square of my graph grid? No, even though 2015 ends just before the end of the grid, that's fine. We've spaced it out. The intervals are good. Now we're going to focus on the y-axis. Thinking about how can we label this? How can we number the y-axis? Well, do we have to start at 0 and then go from 0 upward, maybe 50, 100, 150? Do we have to start at 0? And the answer is no, we don't. When you look at the data, so why not just start at 0? Well, look at the low number, 227 million. That's the smallest number we have to graph. The biggest number, 320 million. If we were to create the graph, the entire graph would be crammed into this yellow highlighted area here. Not that that's a horrible thing, but it's a lot of wasted graphing area where we could space it out better to make it a little easier to analyze for our readers. So how about this example? Something like this. Well, if you look, I hope you realize we violated the interval rule. Notice how there is a gap of 20 million people in between 220 and 240. And then 20 million here, and then 10 million, 10 million, 10 million, back to 20 million, down to 10 million. If we were to do this, it would distort the shape of our final graph. So how about something like this? Everything looks pretty good. I've used intervals of 20 million all the way up, and everything looks fine. Notice how we started around 220 and proceeded upward. Now we have to plot our accurate data points. So when I look at the graph, I see 1980, 227 million. So draw an imaginary line where 1980 and 227 would intersect, and put a nice big blue dot there. 1985, 238 million, put a data point there. 1990 has 250 million. 1995, 266 million. 2000, 282 million. 2005, 295 million. 2010, 310 million. And 2015, 320 million. Well, now what? Well, it's a line graph. Well, in some examples, you may just want to connect the dots. And one dot leads to another dot and leads to another dot. Now, depending on the graph you make, this might be sufficient. But in some graphs, you might want to do what's called a best fit graph, where you just kind of draw a straight line. It's more of an average. And the way you kind of generally create these is half of the dots are on one side of the straight line, the other half are on the other side. This is more of an average. I'm not going to go into this video on when you should do a best fit versus just connecting the dots. That's something that you may learn a little bit later on. So here I've settled on my my general connect the dot graph here. Well, what if I had a second country? What if I had a second country to compare? Well, now I could connect these dots, and what's missing if I were comparing the United States to this other country? What's missing is a key. How do I know which color is which country? And so maybe throw a key in right there. So the blue line represents the USA, the darker brownish line represents the other country that we might be comparing to. So you can see you can have multiple lines on a line graph. Just choose different colors to distinguish which is which. Well, let's come to this, a bar graph. This is a good way to compare data, and we're comparing the 6 states, their population size in the year 2016. I can compare them. So here's our data and my area for the graph grid. And some needs here. Again, let's start with a title. How about states? Again, it's too vague. How about amount of people? Well, it's better. I know people are involved, but too vague. Be specific. How about the population size in the year 2016? Now I'm clear to the reader of my graph. Well, now let's actually start with the y-axis. Again, this is the dependent variable, the data being measured. How about a label for this? How about just population size in millions of people? Well, now we're going to shift to the x-axis. And so what do you think a good label for our x-axis might be? What can go down here? And I hope you realize that would be the states of the United States that we're going to be graphing. We're going to be graphing 6 of these of the states here, California through Washington. So now we have to set up our data here. And so we're going to focus on the y-axis. Again, the rules. Spacing must be consistent and the intervals must be consistent. The low number we have to graph is Washington at 7 million, and the high number is 39. Now 7's close enough to 0 where I might go ahead and actually start at 0 and go all the way up. But I hope you see what rule I violated. I violated the intervals. Notice how there's an interval of 2 at the start, and then around the halfway mark, interval of 4, interval of 8, interval of 11, interval of 5. This is going to end up distorting the shape of my graph if I were to continue. So again, here is a better example. Starting maybe around 0, because again, Washington at 7 is close enough to 0, and I went every 4 million all the way up. And now I have to draw accurate bars. Couple rules. The bar spacing needs to be consistent. The bar width should be consistent. And because we're not creating a histogram in this graph, the bars really should not touch. There are types of bar graphs called histograms where the bars do touch, but those measure something very different. So in this case, bars would not touch. And so for California has around 39 million, and I'm going to draw my bar. Illinois has around 13 million, so I'll draw my bar. New York has around 20 million. Florida has around 21 million. Texas 28 million. And Washington 7 million. Well, what's missing in this graph? Well, I hope it's pretty obvious what's missing. A label for the bars. Now that we've identified California through Washington, this graph is really finished. I have a nice, concise title. I have proper spacing and intervals on the bars. They're all drawn accurately. I've used most of my graph grid. I didn't try to squeeze the entire graph into the lower corner, and this would be a fine, acceptable graph right here. Now, what's wrong with this graph? Well, I hope you see what's wrong with this graph. The bar width should be consistent. In this case, I have skinny bars and fat bars. I'm supposed to pay attention to how tall the bars are, not how narrow or wide they are. This makes me think that there's something significant about the narrowness or the fatness of the bar, when in reality there isn't. It's the tallness of the bar that matters. Well, what's wrong with this example? I hope you see what's wrong is the spacing is not consistent. By doing this, by isolating Washington away from all the other bars, you're making me think that there's something unique about Washington. So having consistent spacing in between the bars is really quite helpful in me organizing this in my mind. And how about this one? So the most noticeable thing here is the colors, I think, because there's nothing wrong with the spacing. The bar widths are consistent, and the bars are not touching. So the thing is, in this case, the colors really serve no purpose other than maybe making it pretty. And of course, having a visually attractive graph can be really helpful, but we really want the graphs to be functional. So in this case, they really serve no purpose. As we wrap up this video here, I'm just going to leave you with this compare and contrast, and I hope you found this video helpful, and thank you for watching.